last-minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning ride is okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always as simple as 1, 2, 3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
You're listening to the NASM-CPT Podcast with Richey, winner of the ShareCare Emmy Award for Social Storytelling and the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
Hey y'all, and welcome to the NASM-CPT Podcast. My name is Richey, and today I want to reintroduce the NASM OPT model to you. I know if you're studying for the exam, this is a very important concept for you. For those of you who've passed the exam, a lot of times it's flush, right? Like just pull the lever and let that swirl right out of the brain. So I want to go into the NASM OPT model again and start discussing it with you. But one of the things that I like about this model is I remember when I first interviewed for NASM back in, 06, I believe, maybe 05 when I interviewed, started working in 06. So it's been some years, decades. And there was a feller working there who was part of the process, the hiring process. His name was Rodney Korn. And Rodney, I still know Rodney. Rodney is a good man and a staple within the fitness industry and a wealth of knowledge. And I also want to tell you something interesting about Rodney. Rodney, I had him on a podcast once. I can't remember if it was the NASM-CPT podcast or as a previous podcast that I had done. But when it was a group of fitness professionals at a conference, and Rodney was one of the guests. And when I asked Rodney, who are you? What do you do? He said, I'm a personal trainer. And literally everybody, leaders in the fitness industry, all kind of stopped and they looked at him and they were waiting for him to go on. And he didn't go on. And I thought that was remarkable because Rodney has a wealth of education, a wealth of experience, a wealth of background, and his pedigree within the fitness industry is nearly unmatched. And yet when they ask what you do, he said, I'm a personal trainer. And that level of commitment to the art and humility I found to be empowering, and I've since taken that on as well. So if you were to ask me what I do for a living, I will tell you that I'm a personal trainer, and I'll stop there. And if you learn more about me, great. And if you don't learn more about me, I'm glad I didn't waste my time telling you other things that I do. So Rodney was important with that. But one of the things he mentioned when we talked about, in this interview process, he said the OPT model is a systematic form of progression. And so he asked me, what is the system and what are progressions? And I don't think I ever pulled those little pieces apart, but I think it's important to do so. And a progression and a systematic means of progression are not the same. And having a system in place to follow that allows you to perform repeatable results with people, because the progression is, well, we can go progress things based on stability. So we can start on a single leg and we progress 2 legs. We can do 1 arm dumbbell chest presses and 2 arms. There are lots of forms of progression within them. There are progressions with volume and load. But what is the system? Well, the OPT model is the system that provides the progression. The system are steps to follow. Regular, reviewed, repeatable, evidence-based steps to follow. And so let's go through the NASM OPT model, and we'll talk about the 3 levels and the 5 phases. And then I'll break it down a little bit, like what are the primary things you're trying to get out of each phase, and how do you go about getting those things, those adaptations you're trying to get out. So with that said, there are 3 levels to the NASM Optimum Performance Training model. They are stabilization, strength, and power. And there's a reason we follow that. And I've worked with organizations as a personal trainer that don't really do it that way. And I think they always put power last, but some of them put strength first, and then they put stabilization second. And the reason NASM goes with stabilization first is that it does seem wiser in the way that you put things together to stabilize the joints before strengthening the muscles around the joints. And what do we mean by that is that, let's take, for instance, if I'm jumping into strength training, then it's not necessarily wrong, but in a specific view of the way to go about doing things, can I build my endurance and specifically around the joints in order to provide stabilization? Because the problem is, if I have limited stabilization and I build strength, then I try to go back to stabilization. I've got a lot of strength muscles that are trying to do stabilizers jobs. And so early on, we say, hey, let's just lay a foundation where we get the stabilizing muscles to stabilize. Your primary movers are still going to do the moving, but because of the endurance and because of the lighter weight and because of the stabilization demands, we are going to work the stabilizers to get them to do their job and progress, as opposed to get the big muscles, because we do like to go directly to the show muscles. Let's do the show work. And NASM says we don't mind doing the muscles for show. We don't mind that. In fact, we think it's fantastic. We have an entire course on bodybuilding and physique training for the stage, if that's what you want to get up there and do. That's a fantastic course to go through. And we've got a podcast related to it with Andre Adams, and we're all about building muscle, but stabilizing to make sure that you can maintain that. Now, I'll give you an example. Years ago, I had a guy who was the biggest human being I've ever seen in my life. He's the biggest person that I've ever seen in person. He was a bodybuilder, and I had gone to New Brunswick, New Jersey to teach an exercise science workshop for NASM. And I'm telling you, like, all of the dudes there were big, and I ain't a big guy. And so when they found out I was the teacher, literally no one talked to me when I came in. They were not interested in what this small guy had to say. And so they all stood around with their gallons of water and their lunch boxes filled with pills and meat, just sitting around grunting. This is terrible. I'm so sorry. This is not what they were doing, but it kind of was. All of them had their coolers with their foods, and all of them had gallons of water. And literally this guy, Willie, walks in, and they immediately, the waters parted. All of these guys were like, oh, Willie's here. Willie. And I loved it because Willie walked straight up to the front of the classroom, and he shook my hand. He said, hi, my name's Willie. Glad you're here. I'm looking forward to today. Let me know if I can help you with anything. And I immediately was like, will you be my friend? Can you be my friend, please? Because nobody's going to listen to me, and they'll all listen to you. And he was like, yo, man, I got you. Don't worry about it. And I said, fantastic. So here, I bring Willie up because Willie's the biggest person. This is usually what I do when I do this presentation, and bring the biggest person up, and I say, put your arm out in front of you. I'm going to push it down. Do not tighten your core. And he put his arm out, and he didn't tighten his core, and I could push his arm down. And then I said, okay, Willie, you can tighten your core now, and don't let me push it down. And I'm not even pushing that hard. And I said, Willie, all right, tighten your core. And he tightens his core, and I push his arm down just about as easy as I did before. And I was like, okay, hey, I have a sneaking suspicion you are letting me win. So I want you to put your arm out as tight as possible and I'm going to pull on your arm. I just don't want you to let me pull it down. So he puts his arm out and I pull on his arm and it starts to lower just as easy as it did the time before. And I was like, I know you're a smart person. So I did something I've never done before and I've never done since. And I feel bad about it. I pretended he was strong. I pretended he was strong. And it wasn't until later when I said, let's do some core stabilization exercises that Willie, when I said partner up with somebody your size, clearly nobody was Willie's size. So he partnered up with a short Asian lady named Fatima. And I remember it just like it was yesterday, as he is. She's doing her plank and he's coaching her and we're doing prone iso abs and we're doing this. And then I'm walking around the room and I'm cueing and I'm helping exercise technique. And then all of a sudden I hear collapse, and a big thud and a big, and I look over and Willie is on the floor and he throws his hand up in the air and he says, yo, Rick, she can do this for like 3 minutes and I can't do it for 3 seconds. I'm telling you, the moment he said that, everything fell into place. Everything in my mind fell into place. And I said, Willie, let me ask you a few questions. Do you lift heavy all the time? He doesn't lift heavy. Relative to him, he doesn't lift heavy. He's a bodybuilder. So he said, no, I don't lift like, max strength all the time, which we'll get into because it's one of the phases. And I said, great. Can you tell me, do you wear a weight belt when you lift? And he said, yeah. And I said, do you wear a weight belt every time you lift, no matter how you lift? And he said, yes. And to me, that answered a lot of questions that Willie was strong, but he was not stable. And because he couldn't stabilize his core, he couldn't hold his arm up when little old Rick was pulling his arm down. I should have been able to pull on his arm, do a pull-up, jump on his arm, bounce off of it like a diving board and do a triple Lutz. But did I do that? No. Because he had a weak core. Why do we do things the way we do? Because stabilization comes first, then strength. What Willie had, a lot of hypertrophy. Don't get me wrong. Everything that he wanted to fit in his world was hypertrophic, muscular development, big, jacked A man. He was big. Did we have a problem here? We did, because there was what we would say no functional strength. And it doesn't matter to him, but I'm going to tell you, one day he's going to try to pick up a couch to get underneath it because his wife, anything like mine, wants to straighten out the carpet or wants to get this little dog toy that went underneath there, and I got to pick it up. And Willie looks strong and he can't do it. And he's got to go over and get his neighbor, which is my size. And I'll be like, I'll do it for you. I was like, Willie, you can't lift the couch. I can't lift the couch. And then I lift the couch and he's got egg on his face. That's not the point. The point is stabilization is important for your functional strength. So certainly you wouldn't train an athlete the way that you would train a bodybuilder. I'm not saying that bodybuilding is not an athlete. Don't get mad at me. But there's a reason why we do stabilization first. Then we add strength. Then we add power. Here are the 5 phases. Those are the 3 levels: stabilization, strength, and power. Here are the 5 phases. The phases of the OPT model. We've got stabilization, endurance. By the way, the name of the phases, this is important. The name of the phases is the adaptation that you're trying to get out of it. The adaptation that you will get in phase 1, which is also the name of the phase, is stabilization and endurance. You will get those 2 things. The second phase in the NASM OPT model is strength endurance. You will get those 2 things. You will build strength and you will build endurance. Phase 3, muscular development, which we used to call hypertrophy. You could still call it hypertrophy, but what we call it now within the text is muscular development. We are developing our muscles, building muscle. Number 4 is maximal strength. Phase 4, max strength. Muscular development is just trying to build muscle in the hypertrophy. Maximal strength is different. Like we looked at with Willie. Willie was very hypertrophic, but he was not maximally strong. Well, I'm sure if he wore the belt, he was lifting a lot. And a lot of times bodybuilders do go through max strength lifts, but they spend a lot more time in that 6 to 10, 6 to 12 rep range. That max strength rep range is about 1 to 5. And then finally, we've got power. And in power, we're kind of doing two things. We're trying to lift heavy, but then we're also lightening the weight, and we're trying to move extremely fast. We're trying to move extremely fast. So let's get into those 5 phases and kind of what are the primary adaptations and the primary methods of progression. But before we do so, here we go. This episode of the NASM-CPT Podcast is brought to you by NASM One, the membership for trainers and coaches. Members enjoy unlimited access to hundreds of career resources. Get the Edge app to schedule and program clients. Enjoy half off all certifications and specializations, access to free CEUs, and more. All of this for just $35 a month. Go to nasm.org/membership to learn more about NASM One. Let's go into stabilization endurance. Stabilization endurance, what are the primary adaptations that we're trying to get out of it? Well, we know stabilization and endurance, but let's go a little more into depth here. What are we trying to get out of this level of training? Phase 1, level 1, OPT model, stabilization endurance. We're going to build or develop mobility and flexibility. Mobility and flexibility. Our goal is to also work on joint stability and core stability. We're also going to spend time focusing on postural alignment. And then primary focus, in addition to those, are going to be muscular endurance and aerobic endurance. So all of these things are components. Now, how do we go about it? What is the primary method of progression? Because everything we're doing is about creating a progression, but how do we do so? Number one, you've got to master basic movement patterns. You're going to master the basics. We're going to teach you how to move, and you're going to practice them, and they're going to be high endurance, right? So they're going to be a lot of repetitions to get a lot of practice on how to move better. We're going to progress exercises proprioceptively once the basic movement patterns are established. And proprioceptively is the understanding of where your body is in space and how to control that movement. So that could be ambulatory. That could be while you're moving, we're learning how to be move better inside of this proprioceptively enriched environment. You could do this on one leg. You could do an elevated one arm push-up. So the one arm push-up on the floor is crazy hard, but I'm just saying if you take it up to like a treatment table or even taking a barbell up and putting it up pretty high and just try to do a single arm push-up, the core work and the core demands of that are incredible, but it's also very proprioceptively enhanced. So there are ways to progress in exercise, not just with weight, not just with sets, and not just with reps. There are a lot of ways to do it, and some of it is the position that your body is in space. And that could be lever length, that could be the amount of balance that you do, so your center of gravity over your base of support. Removing some of that base of support can make it more challenging. So there are ways of progressing. We can increase the complexity of exercise once you've figured out and learned and feel comfortable with those basic movement patterns. And that's our main primary methods of progression. So let's go to strength endurance. Strength endurance. Primary adaptations, core strength and joint stability. We still want the core strength and joint stability, but then we're going to focus on muscular endurance and prime mover strength. Now, we still are doing the endurance thing, but we're also working on the prime mover strength. And that's because we are doing supersets. We're going to do a kind of typical strength training exercise, and then we're going to superset it with its endurance version equivalent. And you're going to keep doing reps. So you don't have to, once your primary movers are tired, we basically lighten the weight, change the exercise, enhance the proprioceptive needs of it, and then have you keep going so that your stabilizers have to work more. So it's a big progression there, and the superset can be pretty challenging, but it also a relatively fun means of exercise. And so this is a really good progression to move people through. Once they do this, the stabilization endurance, move them into strength endurance. It's a great workout. Well, how are we going to progress these exercises? Because those are the adaptations we're trying to get. But what are the progressions we do? Well, we're going to decrease your rest periods. We're going to increase your volume, which are your sets and your reps. We're going to increase your load, make you lift heavier weight. And then we're going to increase the complexity of movement. We're going to make those exercises a little more complex. And that's because you're getting better at it. And as you get better, we can lift more weight. We can increase your volume. We can decrease the amount of rest and make you work harder, but harder in a different way. Because once you go through the progressions, harder might be the stabilization endurance. For a lot of people, stabilization endurance is harder than a lot of the heavier lifting exercises. Next, we've got phase 3 muscular development, formerly known as hypertrophy. Our primary goal with this is, again, core strength, muscular strength, and hypertrophy. So I want my core to get stronger, I want my muscles to get stronger, but muscular development is really about hypertrophy, building, increasing the size of your skeletal muscles. And how are we going to do that? We're once again going to increase volume. So we're increasing sets and reps. We're going to increase load. It's got to get heavier. You're putting more load on the bar, more weight on your body, more external resistance for you to lift. And then we increase the complexity of the exercises as well. We continue to work towards those goals, increasing volume, load, and complexity. Then you get to max strength. Max strength, the primary adaptations are core strength, but maximal muscular contraction, maximum muscular strength. That's a how much can you lift? Not how big a fella are you, but how much can you lift? And I will say this. There are a lot of really strong people out there that are not particularly sizable people. And I know I've seen a 12-year-old girl clean 135 pounds. Not clean, snatch, barbell snatch, 135. I was like, uh-oh, who's coaching who? That's crazy. I had a guy that at a gym one time was making a lot of noise lifting heavy weights. And another one of my trainers who wasn't that much bigger than me, but was a lot stronger, just walked over and grabbed the 100 pounds, pulled dumbbells, pulled a bench up right next to the loud person, and just very quietly did 100 pounds in each hand for about 10 to 15 reps. And then he put the weights down quietly. And he says, once you get strong enough, you'll be able to pick them up and put them down like that. And I was like, oh, snap. Oh, we're all in the back room. Oh, snap. Oh, you heard what he said. We loved the lesson that was being taught. But what I really learned from that is that my man is strong, but you never guess it. You never guess it because size and strength are correlated, but not linearly. So maximal strength is what we're trying to build here. How do we do it? Again, we're increasing the load, weight, the load, but you've got to increase sets here. Why? Because you're not going to be able to increase reps. You can't do higher reps. It's heavy. You're trying to lift heavy. We need 1 to 5 repetitions. So in order to make the progression, we increase the weight, the reps go down, but you got to do more sets to maintain volume. And so that's max strength training for you. And then the final one here is power. The adaptations are going to be core strength, maximal muscle contraction, and then rate of force production. And the way that we do that here is we do a very heavy weight where you're limited to about 1 to 5 repetitions. But then you do a much, much lighter weight and you move that weight incredibly quickly. So you could do, let's say, for instance, 1 to 5 reps of barbell back squats. Then you re-rack it and then you do box jumps, just explosive jumps trying to get up high. It's a concept called post-activation potentiation, where after you lift something heavy, you potentiate, you increase the potentiation of your muscle, type 2 muscle fiber, to explode quickly, because that's how the type 2 muscle fibers work. They lift heavy and they move fast. So we're going to do one set of lifting heavy, one set of moving incredibly fast. So you've got to increase the weight that you do, and then you superset it with moving quickly. And in order to get the volume that you need, again, you've got to increase your sets. All right, y'all. That is a reintroduction of the NASM OPT model. I hope it helps. It reminded you of some of the things that you can do for those who've been training for a while, and you're like, oh, yeah, I'd like to get back in and systematically add progressions for my clients rather than just say, what do you want to do today? And go in and work out shooting from the hip. Follow a system to follow a progression of how you were going to make it happen. All right, y'all. I appreciate it. If you don't mind, just take an opportunity, like, subscribe, share with your fitness friends and family, leave a review, leave a comment. So 5-star reviews are appreciated, but also comments on there really help for people to be able to find the podcast. And that would be really helpful and greatly appreciated. If you want to reach out to me, you can hit me up on Instagram at dr.rickrichey or email me rick.richey@nasm.org. Y'all keep inspiring people to fitness. Thanks for listening. This has been the NASM CPT Podcast.